Hey there folks, the number one Osees fan from the Infinite Jukebox here with another album review, and today I wanted to talk about the new Osees record, Abomination Revealed at Last. The Osees are nothing if not a band of complete and total evolution and self-reinvention. John Dwyer and his associates' sound changes so much from one record to the next that they have basically permanently established themselves as DIY rock's resident chameleons, but even through tunnels of trippy space rock and lo-fi garage rock and in-your-face hardcore punk, etc., there has been one thing that has remained true for the group. They've been constantly willing to build upon their previous sounds. Just as an album like Face Stabber inspired them to build upon this repetitious krautrock sound on an album like Metamorphosed, the underwhelming A Foul Form inspired further explorations into pure hardcore punk with Intercepted Message, a significantly more synth-based album that still wouldn't exist without the former record. And even with the recency of those previous records, they've all felt mostly essential in telling the story of Osees' artistic growth over the last few years. And now, here we are with their latest record, Abomination Revealed at Last, which takes things a step further by being a fusion of all of their previously demonstrated influences from the last 5 to even 10 years, while also being probably their best record since 2015's Mutilator Defeated at Last. A major jump in quality that sees them go from a consistently good band to the outright excellent band that they once were about a decade ago. It would be fair to say that Abomination Revealed at Last is not a singular record at its core. Unlike some previous Osees records, there isn't a specific genre or sound that feeds into their creative mindset going into this project as it develops over the course of its runtime, and in turn, their latest effort feels like a true amalgamation of their recent work post-2015 or so. A large chunk of the album, however, feels rather subdued when compared to their more traditionally hardcore punk experimentations that have been peppered into their ever-expanding discography since the start of the decade, and many of these songs are focused on treating tracks with a certain kind of warmth, as every song feels spacious in a sort of live in the studio kind of way that the band have, I would say, been somewhat missing over the course of their last few records. And this means slowing down many of these songs for the sake of taking them to respectable limits that showcase the instrumental talent and artistry of the Osees without ever feeling overly self-indulgent at all. I mean, as always, the wickedly fuzzy and often downright whimsical guitar work from John Dwyer and Tom DeLaz shines on cuts like Fight Simulator, but the truly underappreciated heroes of the Osees' current lineup are drummers Dan Rincon and Paul Quattrone. Despite being key members of the band, on percussion, the duo in question have frequently been overlooked in larger conversations surrounding Osees releases. But sprinkle in some wonderfully strained vocals from John Dwyer on cuts like Protection and Coffin Wax, and you have one of the most consistent and evenly balanced performances that the Osees have ever delivered. Everyone getting their time to shine, everyone popping out in the mix, everyone just feeling like they are at their absolute best, and it results in the Osees feeling like they really are representing everything that they have stood for artistically throughout various points in their career for a number of years now. It's really beautiful to see in a way. At the end of the day, Abomination Revealed at Last feels like the Osees at their most confident in the studio, or at the very least the most confident that they've been in quite some time, because while their live shows are frequently structured around wild slices of improvisation that have allowed them to become an outsider take on jam bands, if you will, it has always been my belief that the group are their best in studio selves when every track feels unfiltered and wild, yet compositionally well articulated and expanded to its natural limits. And that is exactly what happens on Abomination Revealed at Last, with every track having a sort of raw punch that still feels constantly intentioned and never veers off into any sort of misguided direction, trying to go in a totally new creative avenue for the Osees, or really just trying to turn into some sort of extensive jam that's maybe a little too self-indulgent. Those kind of things just never happened once on Abomination Revealed at Last. And this allows the aforementioned versatility of the album to properly represent the Osees sonically without ever feeling like a mess of countless ideas, which admittedly a couple of their records have in the past here or there. But ironically, the band has had multiple albums with more singular sounds than this that have sounded less confident and less definitive than Abomination Revealed at Last does. And for the uninitiated, this release may even be one of the best possible entry points into the ever-prolific Osees' body of work. although coming in with a sense of familiarity of where a lot of these influences are coming from certainly makes the whole thing feel all the more memorable. But yeah, generally speaking, great Osees record, and it's really wonderful to see John Dwyer and company not only back in great form, but also like putting out one of their best albums in a hot minute. It's really nice to see. It makes me happy. I'm going to give this record 4 stars out of 5. And with that being said, that is the end of this album review. Thank you for watching the Infinite Jukebox, and I'll see you in the next one.